Cageside with John Morgan.
And welcome everybody to the last episode of 2023 of Cageside with John Morgan. I'm your host, Eric McMahon. This is going to be a really fun episode. We're going to kind of break down all the best things that happened in the sport of MMA this year. There was great knockouts. There was major upsets, unbelievable submissions, big moments, great journalism, all the above. We're going to dive into it. To help me do that is the Human Almanac himself. You can follow him on Twitter, John Morgan _MMA. He is John Morgan. He's that man right there. What's up, pal?
Yes, sir. Always good to see you, my man. It's good to have the time of the holidays. You know, this new era of the UFC where we don't have these year-end events like we used to for a long, long time. It gives us a little time to just pause, take a look back, reflect on everything, because there's no off-season in MMA, right? You don't get to sit back and reflect very much. This is that time we get to do it, and then we get to start looking towards the new year where there's going to be plenty more big fights. But it was another banner year, man. It just seems like every single year this sport just keeps getting bigger and bringing better moments and highlights, and this year was no exception.
So I want to go through some big moments. Now, I'm going to preference this to our whole audience. Is like, yeah, I know that there may have been better knockouts, and I know there may have been crazier submissions. But what we want to focus on is really for everybody and what were the ground shifting moments, right? Because something happened on an undercard of PFL or even UFC, let's be honest. Just because it happened on an undercard or a fight that didn't really affect the rankings, we're really not going to talk about that just because it didn't have a seismic shift in what happened. What we want to talk about today is that those premier moments, because let's be honest, that's what everybody talks about at the water cooler that next Monday or whatever. And so I want to focus on that. You know, you agree, John Morgan?
100%. You have to look at it that way, because sometimes, you know, you get into the real weeds of it, man. You could be like, man, there was this regional promotion in Russia that had this amazing move that I've never seen before. That had to be the knockout of the year. It's like, yeah, but how many people really saw that? And what did that do to impact the rankings? And what did that do, as you said, where was that as part of the water cooler conversation? So even though, you know, some purists might be like, no, you have to look outside. I think when you got to talk about the big moments. I think that's the way to approach it, if we're being honest.
So, you ready to get started?
Let's go.
All righty. So, I think we should start number one. I think it's really almost the big dog all the time is our 2023 fight of the year. Now, I don't know how many fights there were between UFC, Bellator, PFL, thousands upon thousands upon thousands. And for me, I'm going to narrow it down to two just to kind of save us time. And this might throw in one if you want to. Okay. But I think universally, for me, there comes down to, I'd say not universally, but for me, it comes down to two fights, right? And number one is going to be Islam Makhachev versus Volkanovski.
Yep. That's
number one. And then we'll talk, and then I'll tell you the other one, and then we'll kind of break it down. And number two for me is Justin Gaethje versus Rafael Fiziev. And one that had major impact in the rankings, but two, just the fight it was, the brutality that it was. So those are the two that I want to focus in on, unless you have something else as well.
You know, it's fun. All right. Well, first of all, I will say that anytime Justin Gaethje is in a fight, just get ready, because that one's probably going to be on some end of the year list somewhere. You know what I mean? That dude, anytime he steps in there, is just all action. So I was interested because I didn't know what your number two was going to be. The number one fight, I agree with you, is the Makhachev versus Alexander Volkanovski. Just the caliber of what was there and what it meant, and just who those guys are and how the fight played out. You knew that was going to be on there. I want to throw one on there, and listen. Recency bias is a thing. There's no question about it, right? Where the thing that you've seen most recently is the thing that sticks in your mind the most. But I tell you what, man, it was a shocking one, and it happened just this month. But Irene Aldana versus Carol Hossa, I just got to throw that on the list too, because on a night that was stacked with fights, I think that was the one that, if I'm being honest, I probably had the least anticipation for in terms of skill and quality. And those two ladies just went at it. I think that's one of the greatest women's fights of all time. It was just nonstop for 15 minutes. So I want to throw that one on the list for consideration as well. Maybe it's some recency bias, but that was a fantastic fight.
No, across the board, we everybody's got awards and all this, and that is universally on everybody's that they talk about. The only reason I didn't is because I preferenced it with the seismic shift, and I didn't really think it had the seismic shift other than the pure carnage and like viewing pleasure that it gave everybody. Not only that, and showing the heart that like these women just had in that cage. So thank you for bringing it up.
Yep. That one, you're right about that. If we were using that as a measuring tool, that would count. The other one that I would throw on there for consideration as well, Alexander Pantoja versus Brandon Moreno. Title fight there. I think that was an exciting one. And
they had two this past calendar year. Which one?
Brandon Moreno. They're in July.
Oh, Pantoja. Did you say Pantoja or
Pantoja? Oh. Yeah, Pantoja. Yep.
Moreno has fought in Figueiredo so many times that I thought you were talking about that. Those were all great fights.
You just linked those two. Those are great as well. I think I'm biased also to the flyweight division. I love the flyweight division. I can't even believe there was a time that we were talking about the UFC getting rid of the flyweight division. I mean, home of Demetrius Johnson, of course, but I just love the flyweight division. So I think that was a pretty fantastic title fight as well. Maybe, again, not the seismic shift because I don't think the flyweights get the love and get the attention, and it doesn't seem to move the needle quite as much anytime there's a title fight in that division. And, maybe it didn't necessarily qualify for that, and it wasn't like the super fight, but it was a hell of a fight as well. So I would put that one on the list.
Honestly, to me, it did have a seismic shift, and I didn't think about it and put it on my list. I don't think out of Gaethje and Rafael Fiziev and Islam and Volk, I would put that clear, like a big step down. But from a seismic shift, I kind of disagree. I think it was a big seismic shift, and I'll tell you why. Is Brandon Moreno was this rising superstar. Now, when I'm talking super, make no mistake, he may be a lighter weight guy, but he may be the biggest superstar that division has ever created. If you hear the crowds when he shows, I mean, he is a Mexican sensation there. I mean, he's approaching Canelo status there. He is such a star. He fought in Arizona. That place was sold out to see him fight. And so the reason it was seismic is Pantoja was this guy that I think the hardcores knew about and knew how good he was, but it wasn't like he was main eventing or co-main eventing fight, pay-per-view events. He may have been on the main card early in the main card, or he may have been fighting in those really premier fight night spots. But for him to show out like he did and used probably one of the most well-rounded attacks against a Brandon Moreno to claim a victory and a title, and then to follow it up with just a couple weeks ago using the same exact game plan when everybody thought, oh, Moreno's about to run away with this in 4 and 5 because Pantoja is clearly gassed. And it don't matter. He's got that where he is going to push through, in which he did in the Moreno and just this past weekend.
Yeah, I'm glad you said that, man, because I do feel like Alexander Pantoja is maybe a guy that doesn't get the respect that he deserves. I think maybe people are hopefully starting to see just how damn good of an athlete he is, right? I mean, he is a phenomenal fighter. You look at the career record. You look at, you said, the well-rounded skills that he has. I mean, if you're game planning to beat him, I don't know that you really see any weaknesses that you go, that's where we got to take him, right? Because that's where he'll be easiest to beat. I don't think there is an easy place like that. You just got to out-heart, out-gut, get yourself ready for 25 minutes of the toughest test of your life.
And a guy who's not going to stop coming after you.
Going to move forward the whole time, going to be aggressive. He's starting to learn English now, too. So, I mean, people are starting to get to know the guy a little bit more, which is awesome. And so I'm glad you said that, because I think people are starting to recognize it. And I'm glad all the respect you laid out for Brandon Moreno, too, because he is still a superstar. It looks like he'll be fighting in a number one contender fight next. Could very well be champion again, or at least contend for a championship in the future. Universally loved. I mean, there is nobody other than maybe Denison Figueiredo that doesn't like the guy. You know what I mean? He's just the sweetest dude you'll ever meet. Yeah. He's so kind-hearted and just a great dude. And so, so I'm glad you respect that one being on the list there too.
Okay, so let's get to the big dog, the top two, in my opinion. Would you agree that that is top two?
Yeah, number one has to be there. I think if you're paring it down to two, you can debate number two, but there's just no debating the number one. That one.
Now, why do you claim it being the fight of the year?
As far
because
as
I slightly disagree. I'm going to tell you right now. My hot take is it's Justin versus Fiziev.
Whoa, that is a hot take.
And I'm going to tell you why in a second, but I want to hear why you think that Islam versus Volk is number one.
To me, it's because it's of who's involved in the case. Now, a good fight, not necessarily the best fight you've ever seen, but it's who's involved. I mean, how often do you get to see, number one and number two on the pound for pound list come together in a fight? You know what I mean? In a very competitive fight. And there was drama around it and all the stories that entailed around it, and all the controversy of IV use and things shot out here. I mean, there's a lot of storylines there, but there's just it's not very often that number one and number two pound for pound get together for a fight. And so when you talk about, looking back in the pages of history, I mean, that's one that'll live there forever. So for me, a competitive fight, a fight that I think you and I, as I recall at the time, did not find the result to be controversial. We thought it was a very good fight. I think some people did find the result controversial. I did not. But an incredible fight that showed the level of these two mixed martial artists. And I mean, that's what we want to see in the sport, is the two best getting together when it's time to get together. And they did it. And so that to me is why. And I'm interested to hear what you had to say, because look, maybe not the greatest fight of all time, but just the principles involved made that one important to me.
Now, I kind of talked myself into a corner. I'll completely be honest with that, because was it seismic and was it shifting in the balance? It was the Islam Volk. Yes, yep. It was the biggest one that did that. 100%. And was it a great fight? Yes. Was it an excellent, great fight? Did it have the stakes of possibly a double champ coming up against, just Khabib 2.0 and everything you laid out? It had all of that in Volk's home country with the surrounding. Did he take an IV bag? Did he not take an IV bag? Everything surrounding that. And then for him to come in and in round number 5, knock down Makhachev, end up on top, grounding and pounding him with the crowd going crazy and everything. Yes. But as I said on this podcast earlier, I firmly believe that the crowd dramatically influenced the fans' perspective of how that fight really went. Okay? I think Islam, every time he hit him, he hurt him, he moved him back. Why the masses think that was the greatest fight of the year is because it defied what people's expectations were. Not necessarily that it was the greatest fight of the year. That's because people thought Islam is going to take him down and he's not going to be, and Volk ain't going to be able to get up.
Yep.
Now, Islam was able to take him down, but Volk was able to get up. And every time he got up, the crowd went absolutely ape shit.
Yep.
The commentators went absolutely bananas. And so I think the reaction to the sequence of events made it more than what it really was. Albeit, I put it as probably number 2 of seismic big fights. That's my number 2. But for those reasons, I think there was influential when I think somebody like me or you can watch it and we're like, I can block this out because I'm really dialing into here.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Right.
And that's why I put Justin versus Fiziev as number 1, because that was just a car crash. And now, did it have the implications? No, but it had the implications of who is the next guy? Who is the next guy? That's the implication that this had. And then for Fiziev, who ended up losing that fight, it became, if you think you're going to be the guy, you better get through the guy who we think is the guy after the guy.
Yeah, 100%.
And I always said this, when you fight Justin Gaethje, he changes people, right? And I think that there's a big perception. I can even say with the Poirier fight, Poirier, he wasn't coming in throwing massive combinations like he did in Justin Gaethje 1. And he wasn't doing all that stuff because he understood. And then staying at that range is what got that head kick knockout, because I think he understands if I stand toe to toe with Justin Gaethje, he can change me. He can change me. And I'm not saying he was scared or whatever. He was cautious. And we don't see Dustin so cautious all the time. He walking forward, moving his hair, pulling up his shorts, and throwing his boxing combinations. He didn't do that as much in that round number 1. Because I think it's the perception of Justin Gaethje. So when Fiziev comes out in those early rounds, he doesn't give a damn. He did not give a damn about any of that. And he came out and went to war with Justin Gaethje. And then it became a war of attrition. And then it became vintage, not new wave, vintage Justin Gaethje. He grabbed a plum, boom, boom, and just started. And I saw the new and the old Justin Gaethje against a formidable opponent in Fiziev who just says, I don't give a damn if you changed me or not. This is my time. And it was just amazing.
Listen, you make a pretty stellar case right there, because as you're describing the action and I'm reliving the moments in my head, a thought occurred to me. And it was like, John, what if for whatever reason, you're told you only get to watch one MMA fight for the rest of this year. For all of the next year, you only get to watch one MMA fight. You can watch it over and over as many times as you want, but you only get to watch one fight. On the left hand is one fight, on the right is the other. And it's these two fights right here. Which one are you taking? And do I want to infinitely watch Islam Makhachev and Alexander Volkanovski over and over and over, or would I want to watch Justin Gaethje and Rafael Fiziev over and over? And the answer is Gaethje and Fiziev, right? I mean, it was the more exciting fight. It had the more highlights. It's a Justin Gaethje fight. Like that dude, Justin Gaethje is a once-in-a-generation fighter, right? I mean, he is literally like the most exciting guy in the sport. Anytime Justin Gaethje's in a fight, it's going to be an amazing fight. And so you make a pretty good case for it, man. You really do. I mean, like I said, it's hard to argue against number 1 and number 2 pound for pound coming together. But when you talk about the quality of just insanity that was in that fight, you're 100% right, man. It was two absolute warriors going at it. It is MMA personified, right? I mean, yes, we all love a tactical battle. You and I, especially grappling enthusiasts, we love, a high-level grappling exchange. But, man, if you want to show the sport to somebody and be like, bro, I'm telling you, you've never seen MMA before? Hold on, man. Watch this. You show them a fight like that, they're going to be into it, right? They don't have to know anything about MMA. They're like, oh, my God, these athletes are savages. So you make a pretty damn good case for it.
But albeit it didn't have the top billing. And so I understand why and I think, really the masses of the people in the know are always putting it at fight number 1 because of the impact it had.
Yeah.
And because of the quick turnaround second title fight that came about on short notice, because they wanted to relive that first one. I get all that, right? Yep. So I really don't think either one of us are wrong. I think it's a perspective here. I think you're writing seismic shift and the importance of that fight and that moment and over the action, and I'm just inversing them, but barely. We're each doing barely the opposite.
Yeah, and it's 3 rounds instead of 5. So how does that play into it? You have 10 minutes less of action to deal with. But you're right. I mean, if at the end of Gaethje and Fiziev, somebody's holding a gold belt in the air, man, you know what I mean? Like that. Now we're saying this was it. This is one of the greatest title fights we've ever seen of all time. So I like the case you made there. I like when you think outside the box a little bit. I think you make an interesting case there.
Well, good. Okay, so Islam Volk for Mr. Morgan, Justin and Fiziev for me. Now, let's move on. Let's say knockout of the year.
Okay.
You ready to go knockout of the year?
Let's go.
This is kind of who I put on the list. Now, last minute addition, I put Josh Emmett and Bryce Mitchell on this list because you have to. Did it have a seismic shift? No, but it was a high profile fight on a high profile MSG card. And so it had to go on there. Okay. Yep. I'm also putting, again, I'm talking myself into a corner, but Robbie Lawler's walk-off KO over Nico Price in his retirement fight. I'm putting that on the list. Okay.
That deserves to be on there, man. That does. And you know what? And let me say, since we're talking about that one, I'm going to make, I know we're not going into everything yet, but I'm glad that one is on there and it deserves to be on there. And you know what? One of the reasons it's on there, kudos to the UFC for all the production that they built around that, right? Remember the special elements and, the UFC, we talk about it being a machine and it just grinds on and fighters walk in and walk out, but to stop the broadcast down, to give Robbie that moment, man, I'm getting chills right now thinking back to it. You know what I mean?
Like an emotionless Robbie Lawler getting emotional.
Yeah, that deserves it. I'm glad you put that on the list because I might not have had that one on the list, but as I'm sitting here thinking back and I'm thinking about everything that was around it and what a legend that man is, I'm glad that one's on there.
All righty. And then finally, I have the head kick knockout of Justin Gaethje versus Dustin Poirier 2, which for all intents and purposes could always set up the rubber match, which when these two guys would get in the cage together, I think everybody would watch it. Oh, and I forgot to say Izzy.
Okay.
Versus my bad. My bad.
I like all your lists so far, but we're missing one that has to be on there.
Izzy versus Bahia is obviously on that list. So before we get into number one, I think universally this one's not even up for debate. Well, so I think it's not even up for debate. But let's go with runner up. Out of those, Robbie Lawler, Nico Price, Justin Gaethje, Dustin Poirier, Izzy versus Bahia, or Emmett versus Bryce Mitchell. Who do you put in that number 2 spot and why?
I think in the number 2 spot, I hope, again, it's not recency bias because it's the one that just happened. As you said, it's the late edition. But the sheer violence of Josh Emmett's knockout, it was one of the scariest knockouts of the year, most powerful knockouts of the year. And it's a weird thing to talk about, but like part of what makes a great knockout is kind of how the person falls and like what happens to them. You know what I mean? Like Edson Barbosa's knockout of Terry Edom, one of the greatest knockouts of all time, right? The spinning wheel kick is insane, right? But what kind of makes the knockout is the way Terry Edom just like slowly falls. Yeah, right? The way he falls back stiff. And I hate to say it because we're talking about damage to a guy I know that and a guy that we both like actually in Bryce Mitchell, but man, the violence to which the way his body, it looked like a video game knockout, man. It really did. It just
and then the seizure crumbling afterwards.
Oh my God! I mean, that was just violence. And then, Josh Emmett is an absolute savage. I mean, we talk, there's guys that have a little something extra, in certain weight classes that just have more power than anybody else. And talk about goosebumps. I'll never forget after that knockout. I always film the guys as they walk by press row. Sometimes they'll have a little, a little message or something they want to shout out. Dude, he just held up the right hand and pointed to it as he walked by press row. And I was like, yeah, man. So that would probably be my knockout just because of the savagery. And I feel kind of bad about that. That would be my runner-up because of the pure savagery of it. I would have no problem with Robbie Lawler being in there as well because of what it meant. Not necessarily that it was the most memorable KO of all time, but just everything that came around it and the career that man had and what a legend he is in the game. And again, kudos to the UFC for adding that little extra elements to it. I would have no problem with that being a backup, but for me, I think I'm going to go Josh Emmett.
It's hard to disagree with you putting either of those in the backup spot. Again, I mean, usually we share a brain in a weird way, but I'm putting Poirier versus Gaethje in that number 2 spot. And the reason I'm putting it in the number 2 spot is these guys are perennial contenders.
Yes.
These two are always going to be on the short list for a title shot. These guys are both have great skill and great power. Justin Gaethje got better power, and I think Dustin Poirier has the sharper striking skills, albeit Justin Gaethje has closed that gap tremendously under Trevor Whitman. When Trevor Whitman says, do you want to be exciting or do you want to be a champion? You saw that gap close. But Justin was the underdog in that fight. Justin was cool, calm, and composed, and he used his skill, not his Rafael Fiziev fight. He didn't use his brutality, he used his skill to get there against a guy who is very hard to really hit cleanly in Dustin Poirier. And the ramifications of it on. Off that, I don't think Justin Gaethje is going to fight again until he gets the winner of Oliveira Makhachev, right? And so that's the impact that had. And now was it as devastating as Emmett's knockout of Bryce Mitchell? No, it wasn't. But it was, if that's a 10, it was a 6. It was a 7. You know what I mean? And so for that reason, I'm putting it there because, Dustin Poirier got knocked out when he was fighting at 45 versus Conor McGregor. I don't think he has been stopped or knocked out. He's been submitted. Oliveira submitted him. He's been submitted, but he hadn't been knocked out. And for you to get knocked out with a head kick while blocking it, that's impressive.
It really is. And again, you lay out an excellent case. You were talking about who these guys are and where they stand, and it's so true. And in my mind, I'll just say it now, it's 2 future Hall of Famers. You know what I mean? Those 2 guys are UFC Hall of Famers. I have no problem saying that. You know what I mean? 100%. So when you're talking about 2 of the greatest to ever do it, and just 2 of the most exciting to ever do it, and 2 of the most beloved to ever do it, right? I mean, the fan bases around those class acts, just what we want in mixed martial artists, right? Like, we all like a little grudge match here and there, but listen, 2023 was a year of some nasty trash talk that we didn't necessarily enjoy. These are guys that, man, I don't need to give an interview. I don't need to say bad things about you. Like, we're going in there and we're putting on a war. You know what I mean? And those 2 guys put on battles. 2 guys that if they're on the card, sign me up. I got to see it. It was Cowboy Cerrone that used to always say, his goal in his career was to make sure that his name was one that when you saw it, you were like, I don't know if I'm buying a ticket or I'm going to the bar or I'm buying the pay-per-view or whatever it is, but I'm not missing that fight. I got to see that. And Dustin Poirier and Justin Gaethje have both absolutely accomplished that, where you do not want to miss any time they step in the cage. And so for them to do it against each other, for it to become in this type of result, and as you said, maybe not the seismic shift and the immediate impact, but everybody wants to see Gaethje fight for the title now. I don't think there's anybody that's out there saying, he needs to win one more before he fights. Like, a title shot is coming next. So, man, I have no problem with that being the backup on the list as well, because that was a big, big moment and an emotional moment, man. Those two dudes are fun to watch fight.
Unbelievable. So with us both putting, talking about 3 or 4 fights as the number 2, right? And giving reasons why. I think it's safe to say Izzy Pereira, knockout of the year. Izzy's knockout over Alex Pereira or Lex Pereira.
It has to be. It just, to me, I don't know how you can really, I just don't know how you can vote anything else. You know what I mean? Because again, we're talking about an incredible highlight. I mean, just the highlight itself. If you just clip it out and it's just fighter A versus fighter B, it's a great knockout, right? It feels like maybe Alex Pereira is gaining the momentum and he's about to finish this, and then boom, the shot off the fence. And just the moment itself. But then you add in what it means in the division, obviously the championship moment. I mean, it's a UFC title on the line, but then you add in as well the storyline, the years-long history of these 2. And then you're talking about, Adesanya mocking the man's kid. I mean, I just everything that was all the stuff that surrounded it. And I can tell you from being in the building that night, the energy in there, it was one of those, Dana White likes to talk about, we like to create these holy moments. That was one of them where it happened and you just turn to your buddy next to you, whoever, and you're like, oh my God, what just happened? So to me, hands down, that is the knockout of the year.
I think Pereira is an inherently likable guy from the masses.
Yeah.
He's inherently likable, and he does unbelievable cool stuff, right?
Yep. The walkout.
Right. Amazing. It's just cool. He's showing up to the weigh-ins in full battle gear, right? In his Aboriginal face paint. So and then when he gets in the cage, he stone faces you. He doesn't move. He doesn't pace the octagon. He's just inherently likable, and he does stuff that's inherently cool.
Yep.
Right? Now, Izzy, on the other hand, if not one of the greatest middleweights of all time, albeit I'm a huge Izzy fan, I love stuff like what he does. And like you said, I've always said I like the Conor McGregor shtick when it doesn't get too dark. I like the Colby shtick when it doesn't get too dark. I like the Izzy shtick. Like, I like that stuff. I'm a pro wrestling fan also, so it blends my loves, right? But I'm going to say from the masses, like, I don't think he is inherently likable. I don't think most people are just like, I love that guy.
Yeah, it's why I laughed when you just started saying his name, because I knew where you're going. Because it's weird, because I'm the same way. I'm an Israel Adesanya fan. You know, I love what he does. He's creating art. He's creating iconic moments. I mean, he is a performer. You know, he's not just a fighter. He gets it, and I love it. But I am constantly surprised at the amount of hate that man gets. A lot of people, just absolutely. I think the only one I had to laugh at him was when he kept trying to drop the "you'll be frozen like Elsa" line or whatever. Like, that one fell so flat. I'm like, bro,
dude, and then Strickland's like, oh man, talking about.
I was like, you got to wrap that one up, man. We got to put that one away. That was the only one that I thought he ever missed on. But I love it. He stuck with it. But he's a showman, man. He goes out there and he fights, man. And I think he's brilliant.
So I say all that because even though I don't think Bahia meant to be the baby face and Izzy meant to be the heel, when he stands over Bahia unconscious and fires those bow and arrows straight into him, boom, boom, boom. I think it was 3 or 4 bow and arrows into a unconscious Bahia. That was a moment that the UFC will be showing for decades to come, not years to come, decades to come. And albeit a guy who now is a 2-division champion, right? So it made it all that much impressive. I do still believe that weight cut had something to do with it. I think all these things had something to do with it. But you know what also had something to do with it? Immense skill. He 100%. Backed himself into that corner, albeit getting leg kicked, but he backed that self and knowing that the same thing that happened in that first fight was going to play out. And he waited for that timing. Boom, boom, lights out, dagger, arrows in your heart. Number one, hands down.
Yep. That's the moment. That's the moment. As you said, that's an iconic moment for forever. You know what I mean? That's a part of MMA history, a part of UFC history. That rivalry was unbelievable, and it may not be over yet. Maybe it is.
That's the beauty of it, John Morgan.
They'll just keep going forever and ever, man. These two are rivals. And yeah, I've loved that storyline from the beginning. It was funny when Alex Pereira came into the UFC. You knew that they were going to rush him to the top, and they did. You know what I mean? And there were people that criticized.
Deservingly so.
That's it. I know that there were some people that were critical along the way, saying, "Come on, man, you got to make this guy earn his spot." No, you don't. You a little bit, yeah, but you don't let a storyline like this and a rivalry like this, get in the way of a couple little rankings here and there. And I'm so glad the UFC leaned into that, because it gave us some truly iconic moments between these two. And like I said, it may give us some more. This thing might not be over yet, but clearly the knockout of the year, and I'll never forget that moment. Savage.
Yeah, and now hindsight being 2020, it was completely deserved after you saw what he did to Sean Strickland.
Yeah,
and people were the jury was still out on Sean Strickland at that time.
Yeah,
so
yeah, that win is even more impressive in retrospect now, right? I mean, unbelievable,
100%. So we are lockstep. Izzy versus Alex Pereira as our knockout of the year. Stamp it, Grind City Media's Cageside with John Morgan, knockout of the year. Congratulations, Israel Adesanya. Alrighty. So, submission of the year? You want to go submission of the year?
Let's go submission of the year. And I'm running them through my head, because I like to have some options on the table. I like to talk about some things. I like to, remind some people of some moments. But I think this is a tough one to differentiate on as well. I have a feeling we're on the same page here.
Okay, I'm gonna go with my top 3. Okay. Right. Well, not in no particular order. I'm gonna throw out 3. We'll see if we think the 3 are there. Now, going through it, I kind of had a hard time because of the side mix. I mean, Davey Grant versus Rafael.
That was a great one.
Triangle.
That was a great one.
That's amazing, right? There's a bunch that were just really, really cool, but I think from big moments and something that I am going to put Shavkat versus Jeff Neal over there. I mean, it was a standing sideways bulldog choke, which then now got him that fight, which got him. Now he's fought Stephen Wonderboy Thompson, and now he may be the next in line. So it was that next elevation. I think a lot of people thought he was going to run through Jeff Neal, and he didn't run through him. But then to get a standing bulldog choke, everybody called it still a rear naked choke. Well, let's not forget, he took it standing. He took it standing from the side of him. That's a bulldog choke. You know what I mean?
That belongs on the list. I believe that belongs on this. And again, maybe not the seismic immediate impact, but two contenders, you know what I mean? Two legit contenders. And now Shavkat looks like he might be one fight at most away from a title shot at this point. And I mean, he's this undefeated, insane finishing streak guy, the guy that everybody has deemed as future champion. And I think that might have been kind of a breakout moment. So I think maybe even if you don't look at it as seismic in the moment, a couple years down the line, or maybe even less, you may look back and be like, that was the moment where everybody said, yeah, that dude is for real.
All righty. The second one that I'm going to put on my list, again, no particular order, is going to be Grasso versus Shevchenko. In that first fight where Grasso became the champion, nobody Grasso, everybody knew, just the Mexican heritage and the great boxing. And I don't think anybody, if we're going to put it up there, said that she was going to win by rear naked choke. So that was, and against, Shevchenko, who's just has set the world on fire for years, completely unbeatable, just an unbelievable fighter. I'm putting that one on the list too. You agree that should be in our top 3 list?
Well, to be honest with you, I thought that was going to be the hands down number 1.
I'm not saying it's not. That's why I'm throwing them around.
Okay. I was like, hell yeah, that deserves to be on the list because that is the list.
And then number 3, John Jones, Cyril Gane.
Absolutely.
Just because that made John a double champ. He ran through him. But you got anything to say about that before we do our vote?
Yeah, it's funny because you have to have John Jones on there, right? I mean, John Jones, greatest of all time in my mind, moving up to heavyweight, defeating Cyril. It's tough because I would like to say, honestly, that should be the right vote. That should be number 1 because, again, we're talking about seismic, enormous moments in the sport, right? I mean, of course, the 2 submissions we're actually talking about, the chokes themselves, the most common submissions you see, in mixed martial arts. Because a lot of times when you talk about submission of the year, you're like, dude, I saw this one crazy move. You pick the most random, like you said, the Davy Grant one, so you pick things that you don't see that often. But to me, again, and you set it up very beautifully in the beginning, and it's like, what really had the biggest impact in the sport? What was the water cooler moment talk? And these were the 2 water cooler moment talks. And I'd like to say that I think John Jones should be number 1 just because, again, what that means, the greatest of all time, becomes a double champ, moving up and unbelievable. But I just have to give that to Alexa Grasso, man. That just was the most unbelievable result. I thought John Jones would beat Cyril Gane. I didn't think he'd make it look quite as easy as he did. I mean, we didn't even get much of a fight. That was insane. I don't know that John Jones has actually had a fight in the heavyweight division yet. That was unbelievable. But I got to give it to Alexa Grasso, man. That, Valentina Shevchenko, the dominant champion. And we thought, yeah, Grasso's, I thought, hey, this could be a fun fight. The boxing, the speed, the movement that she has, this could be a fun fight, but you're not beating Shevchenko. And then to beat her and to tap her out and just what that meant, what it meant to the country of Mexico, what it meant to the division. I have to give it to Alexa Grasso. So a big part of me wants to give it to John Jones, basically because of who John Jones is. But I just remember when Alexa Grasso won, just hands on my head, I cannot believe I'm watching what I just watched. And because of that, that's one of the greatest highlights in the sport's history. That was an amazing fight, an amazing story, everything around it. I got to go Alexa Grasso.
And I'm going to put one. I completely agree with you. I think number 2 is definitely John Jones for Cyril Gane for the reason of everything you just said. And I always go into storylines too. I think storylines do matter in this. And John Jones, and I'm going to go back to my pro wrestling and I'm going to go back to the Izzy talk to reference that upon John Jones. John Jones historically has been a heel.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
He was a huge baby face coming into that fight.
Yep.
the people were just so glad to have the GOAT back. You saw him. He was going to press conferences. He was happy to be there. He was still talking his little ish the way he does, but it was embraced differently because it wasn't against an All-American good guy in Daniel Cormier, or it wasn't against, people that were hoping the massive underdog would knock off the Imperial champion, right? And so it just came off different, right? Of John Jones off the shelf, he's coming up a division, and now can he do it? Can he do it? So people were loving to see him, his reactions that he was getting for that. And he was in full baby face mode. I think John was so happy to be the baby face.
So right. Storylines absolutely do matter. I mean, and not manufactured storylines, not where you make stuff up, but it's just, it's everything that builds around it. That's part of it, right? The fight is the fight, but we love all the build up to it. And you're so right. People were just happy to have John Jones back, that all the controversy, all that stuff. It was in the past. It was gone. People were loving it. And I'll never forget that moment at the press conference. The press conference stare downs. John Jones always does the thing where he looks down at the ground. He doesn't look his opponent in the eye, but he was moving to heavyweight, right? And so he made a moment to look Cyril Gahn right in the eye, let him know, like, hey, man, you may be the heavyweight, but I'm a heavyweight too, right? I'm not just a light heavyweight coming up to your vision. I'm looking you eye to eye, my man. Know that I'm right here with you. And, man, just came out and did what he did on Fight Night. Unbelievable. You feel for Cyril Gahn a little bit. I think Cyril has kind of admitted he just kind of froze in the moment, and supposedly is basically just doing nothing but working on his wrestling, which that could make that man a dangerous dude. If he can shore up his wrestling to add into the athleticism and striking that he has, be unbelievable. But John Jones, what he did that night was unbelievable. And man, that was a great moment. That was number two. And look, if somebody has that as their number one, I honestly don't. I don't hate it. I just think that Grasso, man, that Grasso finish was just a cut above. It was something a little different.
And it was impactful. I mean, I think John Jones, the impact was a little bit more just because of who John Jones is.
Yes.
What John Jones had been on the shelf for 3 years?
Crazy, man.
3 years. But when we talk about unbeatable champions, you have to put Shevchenko into that list. Right? Her only losses were going up huge amounts of weight to somebody who cuts down a lot in Amanda Nunes. And so Amanda Nunes is dropping down to make her weight class. Shevchenko is giving up so much weight and still had very competitive. Those are her only 2 losses in the UFC. And
unbelievable.
So, no, I don't remember the odds on that Grasso fight, but they were not in favor, and they were not even close. And for Grasso to come out and what she did in headlining, when women headline a pay-per-view, and then for you to deliver while headlining a pay-per-view, man, that just says something about your moxie. And then to beat her the way she does, everybody says she's going to use her Mexican style boxing, and can she do that? She didn't do it.
Nope.
She got her to the ground. She choked her.
Unbelievable. You think back to those visuals, man. She was squeezing so tight. The blood was all, the white streak across the face. It was unbelievable. And you're right. Regardless of where you think Valentina Shevchenko is right now, some people feel like maybe she's on the backside of her career. But at the time, when it was her and Amanda Nunes as number 1 and number 2 pound for pound in the sport in the women's division, I always thought it was kind of a disservice even to say that. To me, it was like 1A and 1B because, yes, they had to fight together, but you just see them standing next to each other.
And the only reason they had those fights together is because Shevchenko had nobody to fight.
That's it. That's it. That's all it boiled down to. They in a real world, they should not be fighting each other. They are not the same size at all, but there was nobody else left for them to fight, so they fought each other. Unbelievable, man. What she has done, Valentina Shevchenko, of course, Hall of Famer as well. I mean, there's absolutely no doubt. One of the greatest women of all time. There's absolutely no denying she's one of the greatest female fighters of all time. And what Alexa Grasso was able to do on that night in March, man. Stunning. And again, an iconic moment, an iconic celebration. The creation of a superstar. Another one, Alexa Grasso, kind of like Brandon Moreno, a very loved competitor, right? She's, from the early days Invicta, I mean, she's just always been a fun fighter, right? She's fun to watch fight, crisp boxing, fun style, an amazing personality, right? I mean, she's just always upbeat, smiling, high energy, good energy. Man, she's always been a fun fighter. But then when you say, okay, yes, you've done that, and now your UFC champion as well. That changes everything. That changes everything. We look at Michael Bisping. If Michael Bisping, one of the most beloved figures in the sport, if he doesn't win that title late, I'm sure he's still getting all the opportunities and he's still respected as much as he was. But that changes everything. Once you bestow that UFC champion label, that changes your entire legacy. It changes your entire future. And so to do it in dramatic fashion like this, unbelievable. And it's got to be the winner.
You said it. There's nothing left to say. Alexa Grasso versus Shevchenko, submission of the year. Grasso, congratulations. From Grind City Media's Cageside with John Morgan, you win submission of the year.
I love it.
All righty. So I want to go to our 2023 Fighter of the Year. Okay?
All right.
This one for me was a little bit harder to narrow down. I'm going to give you my top three and then a kind of a fourth alternate for a weird reason.
All right.
I'm going to go in no particular order. I'm going to have Leon Edwards, Islam Makhachev, and Sean Strickland as my top three. And now, for other reasons, if we want to bring them in, here's a fourth, Francis Ngannou.
Yeah, that's an interesting one, right? That's such an interesting. It was whether or not he deserves to be on this poll or not, right? Because he didn't have a mixed martial arts contest. But in terms of cultural impact, changing the landscape, sporting impact, I mean, it's one of those ones that's weird. Like, I think having a guy that didn't have an MMA fight on the list is a little bit ridiculous. But at the same time, like, he is an MMA fighter at his core. He will return to MMA. But to go do what he did in boxing, it's if you tell me that he doesn't belong on the list, I'll agree with you. But if you tell me he does belong on the list, I'll agree with you as well. You know what I mean? It's a weird one. So you can't talk about this year without talking about Francis Ngannou. How about that? You can't talk about this year and not talk about Francis Ngannou.
Yeah, and at the end of the day, let's be honest, he's probably the only fighter who bucked the system and won.
Yeah, unbelievable.
Now, did the UFC take it as a loss? No. UFC did not take an L in that situation, but Francis definitely got a dub. He reportedly made more money in that Fury fight than he had made in his whole UFC career put together, right? Well, and then on top of that, he elevated another brand. And on top of that, he elevated another brand while becoming a somewhat executive in the company.
100%, man. I think you and I were always of the belief, and I think we're in the minority here, and I think more people should be like this, is that it was never Francis versus the UFC, and someone has to win and someone has to lose. You know what I mean? Both parties can pull positives out of it, and I think they both did. You know what I mean? The UFC is going to go on. There's nobody in the game. Look how long it's been since Conor McGregor has fought, right? And the UFC brand's doing just fine. There is no one fighter that's really going to impact the financial well-being and the status of the UFC. Did losing him hurt? Yeah, it cost a couple fights. It could have happened, but the machine is going to move on. But what Francis did for his life, man, is undeniable, man, and not just the financial impact of that one fight, but as you said, elevating the PFL brand, getting what he's going to get to do now, apparently leading the expansion into Africa, which is huge and near and dear to his heart. And then not only that, I mean, the kid wanted to grow up boxing, and he got a chance to do it against one of the greatest of all time. I mean, just home run. So it's
his story, to see where he is now, unbelievable.
It's unbelievable. So it's a weird one to put on the list, but I'm glad it is, because you can't talk about this year without talking about him.
I'm going to add one more on the list now.
All right.
O'Malley.
Got it.
O'Malley.
Good point.
Okay, so so Strickland, O'Malley, gosh, who else did I say now? Strictly, O'Malley, Makhachev, and Leon. Okay.
Yeah.
And I'm putting O'Malley on the list because he didn't fight a lot.
Only fought once.
But
he became a champion.
He became a champion, and I find it hard to believe that pay-per-view didn't sell like Aljamain Sterling is saying it didn't sell.
Well, I don't think Aljamain has any reason. Well, and it's funny because what he said was it's not as big. So maybe it sold fine, but he was just thinking it was going to be like this Conor McGregor type moment, right? And that's just hard right now. I mean, just pay-per-view sales in general are tough. And I think we're
saw that TD Garden Arena though.
Yeah.
And we saw the buildup. And I'm going to tell everybody out here, our O'Malley recap our pre-fight O'Malley and our post-fight O'Malley of that fight was two of our biggest episodes that we've done to date.
Yeah.
Okay.
It moves the needle, man. I think, look, let's be honest. Sean O'Malley, I think, probably pulls a younger demographic in terms of his fan base, and that younger demographic is very comfortable in online piracy and finding a way to watch fights without plopping down $70. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And here's the thing. And this is why I put him on the list, right? Because fighting once, becoming a champion, you're in the discussion, but I don't think you necessarily make our list. But the reason he made my list is because when you can make a fight for your first championship defense against a Chito Vera coming off of a loss,
crazy,
and you have that pull to do that, you're in the conversation of powerful men in this business.
Yeah, you're right. It was funny when you said his name, and I thought about it. I think you're right, because he only fought once. So to talk about fight of the year, one fight, but it is a championship winning performance, which is big. And again, we just talked about the importance of a UFC title. But the way he has managed to make himself relevant on a daily basis, whether he's fighting or not, right? Through his streaming and his podcasting and his social media and just creating a brand, right? Sugar Sean, that's a brand, and people care. And like I said, maybe it doesn't necessarily translate directly to people that are willing to put down $70 for a pay-per-view, but you can't deny the impact that he has. So I think he deserves to be on the list. He would not be my vote, but I didn't have him on my list. But as soon as you mentioned his name and it just started in my head, I'm like, does that belong? You know what? I think he does. He's made himself one of the biggest stars in the sport, man. He's made himself one of the most discussed people, one of the most relevant people in the sport. So I think he deserves to be there. I
think we also, we would do ourselves, and we would not be taken seriously if we didn't at least mention Patchy Mix.
Oh, Patchy. It's a shame, man. And look, Patchy is one of the absolute best fighters on the planet, man. Does not get the respect he deserves. I know it. People were not watching the Bellator brand, unfortunately. And since the sale, you kind of start to see some of their employees and stuff, talking about some of the numbers, and the numbers were bad, and we saw it. I mean, we just know it. I mean, the traffic that it generated, the views. Anytime you talk about Bellator, it just wasn't there. People weren't watching, and they weren't talking about it. But that dude is absolutely one of the best fighters on the planet. So he deserves to be there. He won't get many people's votes regardless, just because they weren't watching it, for being honest. But that dude is a savage and one of the best fighters on the planet. And what he accomplished was incredible.
I believe it or not, I think from a pure skill, all around skill perspective, he is the best bantamweight on the planet. I'm not saying that O'Malley wouldn't beat him. I'm saying from a skill perspective, if he gets you on the ground, we talk about Aljo's, the human backpack. Patchy Mix, I think's jiu-jitsu is on a completely different level.
Yeah. Look, you're saying, you're not telling me that Patchy will beat Sean O'Malley, but you're also not telling me that he doesn't have a chance. You know what I mean? Like, right. Patchy Mix can fight anybody in the UFC's bantamweight division. There's nobody in the UFC's bantamweight division. I'm like, well, yeah, I mean, he would get destroyed if he fought that guy. Nope. This dude is capable of beating anybody. His wins this year, Sergio Pettis and Rafion Stotts, those are incredible wins. You add in what he did in 2022 when you Magomedov and Kyoji Horiguchi. I mean, just that run alone that he had through the Bellator Bantamweight Grand Prix, those 4 wins, unbelievable. To win the Grand Prix and then to unify the title as well, just phenomenal. That dude is on top of the world right now. And hey, listen, you talk to anybody here in Las Vegas that goes with them in the gym, they'll tell you. They'll tell you that dude belongs up there with anybody.
All right. So Patchy, O'Malley, Leon, Islam, and Strickland. Let's go who your number 2 is.
Number 2 for me, that's tough because I feel like number 1 is, I guess I'd probably have to go Leon. Maybe doesn't get the respect that he deserves, but Leon kind of finally establishing himself into who he is and maybe starting to get a little bit of that respect. I'd probably go number 2. If I don't throw Patchy in there, I might throw Patchy in there at number 2. I mean, those will probably be my 2 that are right there. They just fall just below the 1, which is unbelievable. How about you?
I got to put Islam as number 2 for me.
Okay.
All right. Islam number 2 because, to come back off all the controversy of, you didn't really beat Volkanovski. You didn't. And now I know he was training for Oliveira, and I know he had a full camp. But to then But then just to kind of keep riding that Dagestan Khabib 2.0, I am the next guy that is going to reign supreme and unbeatable, and to come back in just the way he did it. And it now it brings that aura. It surrounds him again, right?
True.
That aura is there that is surrounding him again. And now there's talks. He wants to go up. He wants to be a double champ. I think he has the pull, or shall I say, I think Khabib has the pull to make that happen. And I think we're going to see it probably in this next calendar year.
Yeah, I think we will.
But I am going to put him at number 2. And here's the crazy thing. As my number 2 fighter of the year. And what I'm about to say is wild. It's crazy.
I was like, we're just inventing words over here. I like it. It's crazy and wild. It's wild.
Wild. He might not be the best lightweight on his team.
Oh, savage but true. Savage but true.
Usman Nurmagomedov is that guy as well.
He's the real deal, man. He's the real deal. Yep. A lot, man. I'm so excited. 2024, man, is going to be a really interesting year. As far as I don't know how things are going to shake out business-wise with the PFL and their new format and all the thing they're doing, but some of the matchups that we're going to see now that, the PFL and Bellator are all under one roster, I think we're going to have some fun fights on the horizon with that organization,
And I think there's going to be a lot of high-level talent that's going to be picked off coming over to the UFC and making some really exciting things, because 100%. let's be honest, like somebody with what's in flux with the PFL and Bellator, you don't think a guy who, I don't know his contract situation, I'm not even going to speculate, but if it was there, you don't think a guy like him is jumping ship? I can tell you he would be from a 100%. Smart business perspective, because we all know, and any journalist will tell you, when they write about Usman Nurmagomedov, it moves the needle. So if he could get into that title mix in the UFC, he's going to do it. But so anyways, long-winded answer to say Islam is my number 2. That
leads to the number 1. That has to be unanimous, right?
Well, go for it. Let's see.
I mean, the most unexpected championship run of all time, the anti-hero that has become the hero.
Not all heroes wear capes.
I'm telling you, Sean Strickland is the man that we didn't know we needed, but we needed. And I mean, his rise from back-to-back losses. I mean, you talked about earlier, the knockout to Alex Pereira, where everybody was just like, what are you doing? Why are you trying to stand with Alex Pereira? He gets knocked out, but then he comes back and loses to Jared Cannonier, and it's like, well, I guess this guy's
very controversial.
Very controversial, but you're like, I guess this guy's just going to be, kind of a middle-tier guy, and then he gets on this run, Nassourdine Imavov, Abbas Magomedov, and then ultimately Israel Adesanya, where, man, if ever there was a guy that proved, look, when the phone rings, you answer it, you take the opportunity. Maybe it's not ideal. I mean, had to get a passport, wasn't even, just all this. I mean, look, you take the opportunity. And another guy that I just, maybe people will try to tell you in retrospect that they were picking him. I didn't see anybody picking him. I remember us.
Wait, hold on. You say you didn't see anybody picking him?
Well, you're making a
looking
case.
At each other, John Morgan. We are looking at each other's eyes.
Did you believe in your heart of hearts, or because I thought it was going to be a good fight, or were you like, I'm making a case where I can see how he can win this fight, or did you go,
true.
I'm mortgaging my house right now, and I'm taking all of my cash.
Your shit would not have mortgaged my house.
That's it. Yeah. No, listen. You and I, and you more than me, I thought it was going to be a more competitive fight, but I didn't think there was Israel. You made the case. You did make the case. I'll give you that. But I didn't think anybody that was like, I think this dude's just going to outshine, and just unbelievable. And now, I mean, the dude still says some crazy, controversial, wild stuff. It's like people are starting to embrace his madness a little bit, and he's becoming this superstar, man. I mean, Sean Strickland, I think, is an absolute superstar of the sport right now. And he's got to be the fighter of the year. I don't know many runs like his that exist in time, and to cap it off again, not just a nice run, not just a high profile fight, but to cap it off with a UFC title as well. It's an unbelievable story.
Sean Strickland, definitely number 1. I agree with you 110%. for all the reasons you said. And like, listen, he reminds me of Stone Cold Steve Austin. He does everything you are not supposed to do, and people love you for it. Right?
So true.
Now, is he controversial? Hell yeah, he's controversial. Does he say some crazy things? Hell yeah, he says some crazy stuff. But you know what also makes him endearing? He says some things that make a ton of sense. In the chaos, he says some things that make a ton of sense.
Bro, the one that always stands out to me, and it just embodies, I think, who he is in a nutshell, is like, because, he comes and does these media days where he just rambles on for 20 minutes, sometimes answers our questions, sometimes doesn't. But I remember him saying, like, women shouldn't be in the workforce. So I'm like, Mike, why would you say that, Sean? But then he goes, because of the way families are raised now, because we've got both parents working to support, nobody's raising our children, and they're getting raised by social media and TikTok, and they're not getting the messaging that they need, and we need to look at our core family values. And I'm just like, damn, you said something really dumb, but then you said something really smart on top of that. Maybe if you said, we need to look at our family values and maybe find a way that only one parent can support the family and one can stay at home. Now we're talking, you know what I mean? But it's so funny. He'll say something where you go, oh my gosh, Sean. And then he comes after it with some knowledge where you're like, that's actually a fairly good point, Sean. That's actually insightful.
So yes, that is like, honestly, is one of the things I was directly referencing. Okay. Yeah. Because it went from who is this misogynistic a-hole to be like, I agree.
Yeah.
Maybe not with the beginning from the family values perspective. Young boys in particular need a nurturer, then a nurturing mother to look up to, and a father that is going to teach you how to be a man correctly. Yep. Like, it makes all the sense in the world. But I want to move one step further, and why I think he is become the ultimate babyface, the Stone Cold Steve Austin of our era. Right? The guy is a true blue patriot. He loves this country. He loves everything it is given us. He stands up against what he calls tyranny in other countries, and he calls it out while on their soil. And as red-blooded Americans, we love to see that. We love to see somebody sticking up for us, not apologizing for us, taking our back. I think most people love to see that. And I think that has been a rise in his stardom. And then next, then to be the guy who used opportunity to the highest level. Let's not forget, that was not his fight. He wasn't on the list for that fight. DDP, it was signed, sealed, delivered. DDP, Israel Adesanya in Australia, in 6 weeks. DDP didn't answer the phone for whatever reason. He was injured. He couldn't recover. There's been a lot of speculations about that. I'm a big DDP fan. Whatever he says, I believe.
Absolutely.
But Sean Strickland stepped up. And he stepped up when nobody gave him a chance. He went over to in Australia, embraced their people, wore the Crocodile Dundee hat all week, talked about how he didn't agree with their policies, and he was the favorite fighter in that arena that night. Then he does what he does, and he wins across the board, 5-0, knocks down Izzy in the first fight. Just bang, 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 25, 26 unanswered punches in that first round, set the tone. Izzy was shook from there on out. Masterful performance. 2023 Fighter of the Year, Sean Strickland.
Unbelievable. It's been such a wild ride, man. It's, when I think about Sean Strickland, and you laid it out there, it's so true. There's that old saying, like, don't let your mouth write a check that your ass can't cash. Like, that dude knows he'll say whatever he wants, because if you want to fight him, okay. You know what I mean? Like, let's go. Like, that dude will fight anybody, anywhere, anytime.
And you know what more people talk about? They don't talk about him jumping DDP. That's what they say after they say, but Sean Strickland, this good guy, moved a child out of the way before he did it. I mean, are you kidding me? That's how much people love this man now. They don't say he viciously attacked another human. They say he made sure that women and children were moved out of the way before he did it.
You want to know if somebody's a fighter at heart. You know, we say like there's some guys that are athletes and there's some guys that are fighters. I mean, that sequence was unbelievable, right? Like, as you said, moved Gilbert Burns' kids out. And I mean, the second they were out of the way, there was no hesitation. None of this like, hey, let's talk. You know, you see guys in bars, they're talking. There's like you can tell they don't really want to fight. You know what I mean? They're hoping somebody will step in between them and pull them away so they don't have to fight. That dude, the second Gilbert Burns' kids was out of the way, is hopping chairs and throwing punches. It's so funny. Even Drickus has come out and said, like, I got to respect the guy for it. You know what I mean? Like, I don't like the guy at all. Like, he's just standing up for himself. I respect him.
But when you read headlines about the crowd fight between him and DDP, the headline will read, Sean Strickland moves Child out of the way before fighting Drickus du Plessis. That's how much people love him now.
He's a gentleman. It's crazy. Yeah, and it's been what a year. What a year for Sean Strickland, man. Just not something I ever would have predicted. Not something I ever saw coming. But man, it's been fun to watch it.
Here's the last one I want to do. I'm going to throw a surprise onto you.
All right.
Journalist of the year. Listen, and I got to say this. It's been a tremendous pleasure for me to work with you. We become friends. We met by you commentating fights that I was reffing. We struck up a great relationship. I've always known of you, right? I've always read your work back when you were a junkie, when you originally were there. I've always been a huge fan of yours. So I'm not going to say who my number one journalist of the year is yet. I'm going to start with number two.
All right.
And my number two, and I have a hard time always pronouncing his name, but Bronstetter.
Aaron Bronstetter. Yeah, very, very good.
Aaron Bronstetter is a phenomenal MMA journalist.
Yes, he is.
He is phenomenal. I put him as clearly number two, right? And why am I going to judge? How am I going to judge journalists? The way I'm going to judge journalists is who can get access to the fighters, and not just get access to the fighters, get access to all fighters and write accurate stories, tell the story as it needs. I'm not going to put my opinions in it. I'm not going to do this, that, and the other. And I'm going to recap, and I'm going to get the interviews, and I'm going to tell the story the way the story, like true blue journalism. I think he does a phenomenal job. Do you have anything to say about him?
Yeah, it just kind of brings a smile to my face, man. I think Aaron Bronstetter does a great job. So I'm glad to hear you giving him that recognition, man, because I think he does a fantastic job and maybe flies under the radar a little bit sometimes, maybe because he's up in Canada or, he doesn't work for one of the big, MMA websites. He works for a mainstream company in TSN up there. So, maybe some of his work doesn't get seen, but you're spot on. So I'm just glad to hear your assessment. I mean, obviously I've got a lot of great colleagues that I've worked with over the years, at a number of different publications, and there's a lot of great people in the space doing work, but I will co-sign on that, man. That Aaron Bronstetter deserves recognition like that. So it's cool to hear you giving it to him.
So my 2023 Cageside with John Morgan, Journalist of the Year, goes to John Morgan.
Yeah, I better not lose on my own show.
No, and honestly, I'm shooting here. Like, I'm being real, right? You're the only journalist in the space of MMA that covers grappling, covers all the major promotions, and covers the big and covers the UFC, and the one, like, let's be honest, outside of Colby Covington, where I don't think there's any controversy there, and there hasn't been any controversy for a long time, you're the only one who I don't think that there's controversy surrounding, and I think like the one thing about, Bronstetter is he's not covering the regional scene to the masses.
Right.
You are. I came up on the regional scene. And that's, and you're the only high profile guy that is really showcasing those stars of tomorrow, not only in articles, but in interviews on Twitter. You're giving them that platform. You're elevating them. So then when we see them at the next level, we know who we are, we know who they are. And then, of course, you're the guy that you're the first question guy also. So you're doing it on the regional scene, but then you're the first question guy on the big dog scene. And for me, it's easy. You're Journalist of the Year.
I appreciate that, man. I always get a little bit uncomfortable with praise, and I'm a humble guy or whatever. But I appreciate that, but I like the things that you're noticing, because those are things that are important to me, man. It is, there's things that I could do that would get more views and more clicks and more, if I was only interviewing the highest profile athletes. But like, I'll be honest with you, the guys that are in the headlining slots and the big stars, like, I don't feel like they need me. You know what I mean? Like, they've got their own YouTube channels, they've got the UFC machine. What's one more interview going to do? But if we can really shine a light on some of these other athletes out there, and I only wish I had more time to do more of it, because there's so many great deserving athletes out there that are sacrificing. And I mean, we see it up close and personal, right? Like what people have to go through to because they love the sport, you know what I mean? Because they love the sport, and they'll sacrifice their life to try to succeed at it. And if I can help shine a light on that and help get their story out, I want to do it. And it's one of the reasons I'm so passionate about working with CFFC and what we do there and as you said, with grappling, and now this year college wrestling has been a new passion for sure. With match
Muay Thai is gonna be coming.
Muay Thai is coming as well. So I mean, dude, I love it, man. So I appreciate those things, and like you said, man, our friendship has been great. And so I would hope that I would get your vote as a friend, but the things that you observe and the things you mentioned is cool, because that means a lot. Those are the things that are important to me too, and it's taking some time to figure out kind of where my role is. And obviously, since I've left MMA Junkie, but I'm starting to really figure that out more and more each day. And it is exactly that, man. It's to give opportunity and light, and to try to showcase some of these guys that aren't being showcased, that are deserving of it, because they put in just as much effort as the guys at the very top.
Well, it's been a wild 2023.
Yes, it has.
Wild. Let's go down the list. Fight of the year. John Morgan picks Islam versus Volk. I deviated slightly, and Justin Gaethje versus Fiziev. So we disagreed there. All righty. Submission of the year, unanimous, Alexa Grasso versus Shevchenko. Fighter or knockout of the year, we both went with a unanimous Israel Adesanya over Alex Bahia. And then what did I miss? Fighter of the year. Did I say fighter of the year?
Strickland. Yeah, got Sean Strickland. Submission of the year as well. Submission of the year, Grasso.
No, yeah, I said that. And then Sean Strickland of the year. Sean Strickland for fighter of the year. And man, what I thought was going to be a 30-minute episode today, we're well over an hour. I say that all the time. Like, there's not much to talk about this week.
Hey, that's it though, man. When you got two guys that love the sport, man, we can sit here and go another hour if we wanted to. You know what I mean? I can talk about this sport all day.
But man, it was a fun year. And I gotta say, moment of the year for me was getting my Nevada State Athletic Commission license, elevating it up to the big stage, which I think I'm hoping that there are going to be big things in store for me in 2024. I'm excited for it. What are you looking forward to in 2024?
I think you're the Cageside with John Morgan referee of the year. We'll give you that, but yeah. No, man, I'm just looking, man. I'm looking forward to further development. Like I said, with CFFC, man, we had a great inaugural season with Match Day with college wrestling, and so I'm anxious to see where we take it in season 2, because in the beginning, people were like, "What are you doing? What on Fight Pass? College wrestling? What?" And then, under the guidance of Rob Haydack, man, we put on some pretty cool events. We still have 2 left to do, including one January 7th in Atlantic City. But I think there's buzz around it. I think to see what we're able to do in season 2 is going to be amazing. So I'm anxious to do that. I'm actually anxious to see everybody that wrestled for us this year in the NCAA finals in March, man, to see how they perform, because we got to see them up close. So I'm looking forward to that. Looking forward to, calling more fights. My man, CM Punk. Looking forward to seeing CM Punk in the WWE some more, man. I love seeing him out there doing his thing. There's going to be some big UFC fights. Hopefully the return of Conor McGregor. I thought for sure that crystal ball was saying UFC 300. Now the crystal ball is getting a little more cloudy in there. I don't know, but hopefully we'll see Conor at some point. There's going to be some big title fights, man. John Jones again. It's just this sport, man. It just always moves forward. Ooh, how about the UFC event at the Sphere in September, man? Like, what's that going to be like? That's going to be insane. So there's just going to be some fun stuff as always.
I'm fired up for 2024. 2023 has been a great year. 2024 looks to be another banner year for the UFC. Anxious to see what happens with Bellator PFL. I hope they keep running big local shows, local here in the United States. I'm hearing it's going to be a big international presence with them. But I mean, I think it's good for the sport to a degree as long as they can keep it together. That remains to be seen. So, man, what a great year. Thank you to all your listeners. We've seen some tremendous growth in this show over this calendar year. It was our first full year of the podcast, and I thank each and every one of you. Well, with that being said, for John Morgan, I'm Eric McMahon. Happy New Year and enjoy the fights.